Bolden is seeing a lot of reps for a guy who I thought...
You seem surprised.
I do.
You seem surprised by that.
Because he really hasn't given you anything
no,
as
he was
a running
non-factor.
back. Like,
yeah,
you
last
know,
year at least.
Right. Like Lewis... And Lewis has had his days where he's seen the majority of reps.
Mm-hmm.
Today was not one of those days. Burkhead, I think, has been sprinkled in, but there hasn't been like a Rex Burkhead day, a day where he's really been worked very heavily. But Bolden is out there with the starters a lot, and I don't know what to make of it.
He is 5'11", I think, but 220 pounds, and so he's even a little bit heavier than Gillislee.
Yeah.
In terms of how they're listed.
He's actually the biggest back on the team.
He is the big back, and especially with Gillislee out.
Right.
So we think, you know, and I still feel this way. When Gillislee's healthy, he's going to be that quote-unquote big back role, that role that Blunt had last year. You know, I think Rex Burkhead can do some of those same things. He can run between the tackles, and he can run with good pad level and run through contact. He is a strong guy. He's 210 pounds, so it's not like he's, you know, some, you know, daffodil out there floating around. But, like, Bolden is the closest thing I think the coaching staff thinks of when they think of that big back role. So with Gillislee down, we've seen him getting all kinds of reps. We haven't seen him near the goal line, which is interesting. We've seen more Burkhead.
Yes.
I think because of maybe Burkhead's elusiveness. If somebody breaks through the line, Burkhead has a better chance to sidestep and then run over somebody if he needs to. But I would say Bolden hasn't looked awful. Like, we're surprised he's been out there, but have you seen any plays where you've just been like, ooh, like he really doesn't belong out there?
I thought he originally got some goal line carries.
Yes.
And he's a pretty upright runner, so even though he's 225 pounds and really well built, like Bolden's jacked, there's really no other way to say it. He's not...
He's a good athlete. He's used a lot on special teams.
It's not impossible to stop on the goal line just because he doesn't really run with that forward lean. Like when you watch Burkhead on the goal line, he really hits the hole hard. Bolden, not as much.
But he doesn't have the side to side really.
Right,
like I think he's pretty fast, straight line.
Right.
And we have seen him take handoffs, and it's almost like you know, probably like the original John Madden video game where like players could only like run like and face in one direction and do that. Like he'll run at the line and then just turn 90 degrees sideways and run around the edge and outrun some people because he's a pretty fast guy.
Right.
But he doesn't do a whole lot of juking at the line and cutting and getting upfield.
Yeah. So he looked good in the preseason.
Yep.
He looked good today from what we saw.
Yeah.
So I'm beginning to wonder because, you know, when they signed those four backs and when they kept Lewis and they acquired Burkhead and Gillislee, I thought, you know what, Bolden's just not going to make the team. He's got to be pretty close to the bubble. You did a projection lately. Do you have him on or off?
He was on.
He was on.
Okay. I learned a long time ago that if there is ever a guy who is really on the bubble and you're looking at somebody else and one guy gives you special teams value and the other one really doesn't, you go with the guy who gives special teams value. It just seems to be the way they do it every single year. You know, I think last year was a great example. We all thought Crevon LeBlanc was going to make the 53 at the end of the year because he was getting his hands on footballs. I think he had a pick in the preseason, but he didn't give you anything on special teams. And Jonathan Jones, we know what he became as a special teamer. He was the choice, it looked like, between those two, and that caught me off guard. So he's on there. I have them keeping 5 running backs. Part of the reason, too, is if this hamstring thing continues to be an issue for Gillislee, and we know that can linger for guys, I think Bolden does give you some value in terms of depth as a bigger runner, because if it's just Burkhead, then you might be playing with fire.